The wind screamed across the endless white plains. Ice dust swirled in the air, dancing like shattered glass under the pale light of a dying sun. Ryan stumbled forward, one hand shielding his eyes, the other clutching a broken scanner that beeped weakly. The screen flickered, showing nothing but static. His breath came out in small clouds that froze almost instantly. He had been walking for hours, maybe days. Time no longer felt real here. His crash pod had gone down during a routine supply run. One moment, calm space. The next, fire alarms and a storm that tore his ship apart. Now he was alone on this planet that wasn't even marked on the map. The temperature was dropping again. His suit heater blinked red, warning him that the power cell was dying. Ryan looked around, but there was no sign of shelter, only frozen dunes stretching to the horizon. He whispered to himself, "Keep moving, Ryan, keep moving or you're done." The silence was broken only by the wind. Then his scanner beeped once. Weak signal. Life form detected. Ryan stopped, staring at the display. The signal flickered faint and unstable about 200 meters ahead. His heart began to pound. Could it be another survivor? Or just a glitch? He pushed forward through the storm, forcing his frozen legs to move. The snow grew deeper with every step. The wind howled like a beast. Just as he was about to give up, he saw something small lying in the snow. At first he thought it was a piece of wreckage. But as he got closer, he saw fingers. Pale, delicate fingers with faint blue light pulsing beneath the skin. A girl, an alien girl, half buried in the snow, barely breathing. Her hair was silver white, matching the snow around her. She looked fragile, too fragile to be alive. Ryan dropped to his knees beside her. Hey, can you hear me?" No answer. Her lips were blue, her skin icy cold. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. There was a pulse, weak but there. Relief hit him like a wave. His training told him to move on, to save himself. His suit was already losing power. Carrying extra weight would slow him down. But something inside him refused to leave her. Maybe it was the way her face looked. Peaceful, innocent, almost human. He lifted her gently, wrapping her in his emergency thermal blanket. She was light, almost weightless. As he stood up, the storm roared louder, as if warning him to turn back. "Not today," he muttered, tightening his grip. Through the blinding snow, Ryan spotted a dark shape ahead, a metal structure half buried in ice. It looked like part of an old escape pod. He hurried toward it, every step heavier than the last. His boots sank deep into the snow, and the girl's soft breathing against his chest reminded him she was still alive. For now. When he finally reached the pod, he forced the frozen hatch open. The metal screeched in protest. Inside was darkness and the sharp smell of rust and frozen oil. But it was shelter. He laid the girl on the metal floor, sealing the hatch behind him. The sudden silence felt unreal after the storm's roar. Only his own heartbeat echoed inside the small space. Ryan knelt beside her, turning on his helmet lamp. Her skin glowed faintly in the light, almost like crystal underwater. He checked her vitals again, still weak but holding. He connected his small heater to the pod wall and aimed it toward her. The device hummed softly, pushing out a thin wave of warm air. Minutes passed. Her breathing grew steadier. Ryan sat back exhausted, rubbing his numb fingers together. He studied her face, wondering what kind of species she belonged to. Her ears were slightly pointed, her eyes closed but framed by long silver lashes. She looked peaceful now, like she was dreaming. He reached for his datapad and tried sending a distress signal, but the transmitter was dead. No network, no orbiting satellites, nothing. He was cut off. "Great," he muttered. "Just you, me, and a snowball of death." He leaned his head against the cold metal wall and closed his eyes for a second. His body begged for rest, but his mind refused. Something about this planet felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. The storm had eased outside, but there was no other sound, no movement, no wildlife. Only that strange silence that made him feel like he was being watched. Then a small sound, barely a whisper. Ryan's eyes snapped open. The alien girl moved slightly, her lips parting. A soft, trembling word escaped her mouth, so faint he almost missed it. "Cold." Her voice was light, almost musical, but filled with pain. Ryan leaned closer. "Hey, stay awake, okay? You're safe now." She opened her eyes for the first time, glowing, shimmering blue like a reflection of the stars. For a moment he forgot how to breathe. Those eyes weren't human. But they weren't threatening either. They looked scared, lost. He smiled weakly. "Yeah, I know. It's cold. Just hold on. She blinked slowly, trying to speak again, but only a whisper came out. Human. Then she went silent once more, her eyes closing. Ryan sat beside her through the night, feeding what little power he had left into the heater. The storm outside raged again, pounding the metal walls. He didn't know who she was or why she was here. But he knew one thing for certain. Leaving her to die out there would have been the same as losing his own humanity. As the wind screamed and ice hammered the shelter, Ryan whispered to himself, "This planet wants us dead, but not tonight." Outside in the endless storm, something howled back, something alive, and watching. The storm outside refused to stop. It slammed against the metal walls of the broken pod like a living thing trying to get in. Ryan sat near the heater, staring at the alien girl. Her breathing was still uneven, her body curled tightly under the emergency blanket. The dim orange light from the heater made her skin glow faintly, showing the strange blue veins beneath. For the first time since the crash, Ryan felt he was not completely alone. But that thought brought no comfort, only questions. Who was she? How long had she been out there? And why was her signal the only one on this planet? He checked her again. Her temperature was rising slowly. Her body was small, maybe the size of a teenage human, but her features were delicate and alien. Too perfect, almost made by design. The way her chest moved, the rhythm of her breath was slower than human. The pod creaked. Ryan turned sharply, holding his plasma pistol close. The shadows on the wall shifted, stretching across the metal like long fingers. He waited, listening. Just the wind, he sighed, lowering the weapon. His nerves were raw. The crash, the storm, the silence, everything was wearing him down. He needed sleep, but he didn't dare close his eyes for long. Suddenly, a soft sound made him freeze. Water. The alien girl had opened her eyes again. They glowed brighter than before, reflecting the heater's light. Her voice was soft but clear now. Ryan reached for his canteen and poured a few drops onto a metal cap. He held it near her lips. She looked at him uncertainly, as if not understanding what he was offering. Then she sniffed it lightly and took a tiny sip. Her throat moved slowly as she swallowed, and for a second Ryan thought he saw a faint shimmer pass through her skin, like light moving under glass. "Better?" he asked quietly. She blinked, tilting her head, not understanding all his words, but she nodded. Ryan gave a small smile. "Okay, baby steps." He leaned back against the wall, watching her. The way she studied him was strange, not with fear, but with deep curiosity. Her eyes moved over his face, his uniform, the heater, as if trying to remember something. Then she lifted her hand slightly and pointed at him. Man," she said slowly. Ryan's eyes widened. "Yeah, human. That's me." She repeated the word again, more clearly this time. "Human." Then she pointed at herself, hesitated, and whispered, "Elira." He nodded gently. "Elira, that's your name?" She didn't respond with words, but her eyes softened. He took that as a yes. Outside, thunder rolled like a distant growl. The wind moaned through the cracks of the pod. The heater flickered. Ryan frowned, checking the power. Only 15% charge left. If the storm didn't end soon, they'd both freeze. He looked at the girl again. Elira's body was still trembling, but her color was returning. He wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She looked up at him suddenly, and for a second her hand brushed his. A pulse of warmth passed between them. Unexpected, alive. Ryan drew back slightly, startled. The warmth wasn't from the heater. It came from her. She noticed his reaction and slowly moved her hand away, folding it against her chest like she had done something wrong. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're warm." That's good. But his heart was racing. What was she? Some kind of bioengineered species? Or a survivor of an alien war? The heater dimmed again. The light inside the pod grew weaker. Elira looked toward the dark corners and whispered something in her language. Soft, musical, almost like prayer. Ryan followed her gaze. The shadows seemed to move again. He reached for his pistol, every muscle tight. "Relax," he muttered to himself. Just tricks of the light, but he didn't fully believe it. Minutes turned into hours. The storm howled endlessly, shaking the walls. Ryan's eyelids grew heavy, but he forced them open. He couldn't fall asleep. Not when he didn't even know what else was out there. Elira shifted slightly under the blanket, her voice trembling. "Cool," he sighed. "Yeah, me too." He opened another emergency ration pack and split it in half. She looked at it with confusion, then cautiously took a bite. Her expression changed, surprise, maybe even gratitude. For a moment, they shared a quiet stillness. Two strangers from different worlds trapped together in the dark. Ryan looked at her again, noticing the faint marks on her neck, burned scars, maybe chains once worn. He frowned. Someone had hurt her. Someone had left her to die out there. He clenched his jaw. "Who did this to you, Elira?" He whispered. She didn't answer. Her eyes closed slowly, her body finally relaxing as she drifted into sleep. Ryan leaned back, the heater's soft hum fading into silence. His own eyes burned with exhaustion. Before they shut, he caught one last look at her peaceful face. Outside, the storm began to quiet. But something else had changed in the air. A distant growl echoed through the frozen valley, deep, ancient, and too close for comfort. Ryan opened his eyes again, gripping his pistol tight. The night wasn't over, not even close. The night pressed harder against the broken pod. The heater had gone silent hours ago, its last spark dying in a puff of smoke. Now only darkness and freezing air filled the small metal shell. Ryan rubbed his hands together, trying to stay awake. His breath came out in short clouds that vanished as soon as they formed. Every metal surface around him had turned to frost. Elira lay curled beside the wall, wrapped in the emergency blanket. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dark, giving off a soft blue glow. It wasn't enough to warm her or him. Ryan checked the temperature on his wrist pad. -72, a death sentence without proper heat. He pressed his lips together. "We're not going to make it if this keeps up." The pod creaked as the wind outside slammed against it again. He could almost feel the storm's rage seeping through the cracks. Ryan crawled closer to the small heater, tapping it. Nothing. It was done. The last bit of energy had burned out. He looked toward Elira. Her breathing was shallow again. Ice crystals formed on her hair. She was dying, slowly, quietly, the way the cold takes everything. Ryan pulled out his last working thermal source, his sleeping bag. It was designed to trap body heat, just enough for one person. He hesitated, then unrolled it and climbed inside, shivering as the warmth began to build around him. For a moment it felt like heaven compared to the rest of the pod. Then he heard it. A soft sound. Human. His head turned. Elira's eyes were half open, glowing faintly in the dark. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "You must let me into the sleeping bag, too." The night, "It is very cold," Ryan froze. He knew the rules. Sharing a thermal bag with another organism, especially an unknown alien species, was dangerous. Temperature differences could shock the body. Even worse, his oxygen levels were already low. Two people breathing inside could deplete it faster. But as he looked at her, her fragile hands shaking, her voice breaking, logic started to lose its grip. He stared at the frozen pod ceiling, took a slow breath, and finally muttered, "All right, just for warmth." He opened the zipper slightly and motioned for her. "Come on." Elira hesitated, her glowing eyes watching him carefully. Then slowly she moved closer. Her movements were weak but graceful. When she slid inside, the bag stretched tight, trapping their shared body heat. Ryan felt her shiver against him. Her skin was cold, too cold, but within minutes it began to change. A strange warmth spread through the fabric, steady and deep. It wasn't human warmth, it felt almost alive, pulsing like energy beneath her skin. He whispered, "How are you doing that?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were closed, her breath soft against his chest. Outside, the wind screamed louder. The pod rattled, dust falling from the ceiling. Something heavy brushed against the hull, a dragging sound followed by a low growl. Ryan tensed, holding his breath. "What was that?" he whispered. Elira stirred, opening her eyes. "They smell warmth," she said weakly. "The ones outside, they hunt by heat." Ryan's stomach dropped. "What are they?" "Phreноx," she whispered. "They eat what still breathes." He gripped his pistol, his other arm instinctively wrapping tighter around her. The sound came again, closer this time, scraping metal. The creatures were circling. "Stay quiet," Ryan whispered. "Don't move." Minutes dragged like hours. The noise faded slowly into the wind again. Ryan didn't move. Elira's head rested against his shoulder now. He could feel her heartbeat, slower than a human's but strong. When the silence finally returned, Ryan relaxed slightly. "You saved us back there," he said quietly. How did you know what those things were? Elira's voice was soft, almost fading. I have lived with fear for a long time. It teaches how to listen. Ryan looked at her, realizing the sadness in her words. She wasn't just a survivor, she was haunted. He swallowed hard. You don't have to be afraid anymore. We'll find a way out, she blinked up at him. You promise? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I promise. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Humans always promise, but still, I believe you. The warmth inside the bag grew stronger, pushing back the freezing air. Ryan's eyes grew heavy, exhaustion finally catching him. As he drifted into uneasy sleep, he felt her hand rest gently against his chest. Outside, something howled again, distant but waiting. Inside, two strangers from different worlds shared the only warmth left on a planet of ice. And for the first time since the crash, Ryan dreamed, not of escape but of hope. The sound came again, slow, heavy, and too deliberate to be the wind. Something was moving outside the pod. Ryan's eyes snapped open. He didn't know how long he'd slept. The dim light from his helmet visor showed Elira still resting beside him, her soft glow faint but alive. For a brief second, the peace of the moment almost convinced him that the night's danger had passed. But then the metal wall behind them groaned, a deep, sharp bend of steel that sent a chill through his spine. He pushed himself up, careful not to wake her. The heater was still dead. The air was cold enough to sting his throat as he breathed. He crawled to the small window of the pod and brushed the frost away with his glove. At first he saw nothing, just a white blur of snow and darkness. Then a shadow moved across the storm. It was large, very large. Ryan's pulse quickened. No, he whispered. Please tell me that's the wind. But it wasn't. The shape came closer, slow and heavy, its movement strangely graceful. Through the snow he could see a glint of reflective eyes, dozens of them, watching, searching. Elira stirred, sensing his fear before she even saw the creature. They found us, she said softly. Ryan turned to her. You mean those Franox things? She nodded weakly. The hunters. They smell heat, they hear heartbeats. If we move, they will know. Ryan froze, holding his breath. His heart pounded like a drum. How many? Her glowing eyes flicked toward the window. One, maybe two. But if it calls to the others, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. The scraping sound returned, closer now. The creature's claws raked against the metal shell of the pod, testing it. A deep growl vibrated through the walls, making the floor tremble. Ryan clenched his plasma pistol, switching it to low power to avoid giving off heat. If it gets in, I'll shoot. Elira grabbed his wrist. No, she hissed. You fight it, the others will come. They hear the sound. They smell the fire. Ryan stared at her. Then what do we do? Sit here and wait to be eaten? Her eyes closed for a second. When she opened them again, they glowed brighter, almost like twin stars. I will make it go away, she whispered. Before Ryan could stop her, she crawled toward the hatch. Elira, he hissed. You can't go out there. She looked back, her face calm but sad. You saved me, human. Now I must save you. The words hit him hard. He wanted to grab her, to stop her, but something in her expression made him freeze. It was the quiet courage of someone who had faced monsters before. Elira placed her hand against the cold metal wall and began to hum. The sound was soft at first, almost too low to hear, but it grew, vibrating through the air like a living pulse. The pod itself seemed to hum with her, each note deeper than the last. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The air shimmered faintly. Outside, the creature paused. The scratching stopped. Elira's voice rose slightly, carrying a tone that felt ancient and strange, like music made of wind and sorrow. The shadow outside shifted, uncertain. Then, slowly, the massive figure turned away. Through the frosted glass, Ryan saw it retreat into the snowstorm, its many eyes dimming as it vanished into the blizzard. The humming faded. Elira's glow weakened, her shoulders trembling. She fell back against the wall, her skin pale and wet with frost. Ryan rushed to her, catching her before she hit the floor. Hey, easy. She tried to smile, but her lips were blue. It's gone. For now. He held her close, wrapping the blanket around her again. What did you do? Franox obey sound, she murmured. Their minds, simple. I sang the tone of their queen. They believe she called them away. Ryan looked at her in disbelief. You can control them? She shook her head weakly. Only once now. They will learn the truth. He felt a lump form in his throat. She had risked everything for him, for both of them. The pod creaked again, but this time it was quiet, like the storm was finally starting to fade. Snow still blew through the cracks, but the howling had softened into whispers. Ryan exhaled slowly, his grip on her tightening. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. She looked up at him with tired eyes. "Humans say that when they care." He blinked, surprised. "Where did you—" "From your mind," she said softly. "When you touched me before, I saw pieces, memories, your home, your ocean, your sky. Beautiful, blue like my eyes." Ryan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. Alira's eyes closed again, her body finally relaxing. "Sleep, human," she whispered. "For now. The night belongs to us." Ryan watched her for a long time, listening to the silence that followed. For the first time since he'd crashed, he felt something other than fear. Hope. But outside, hidden deep beneath the snow, more shadows were moving, slow, patient, and hungry. The storm might have ended. But the hunt had only just begun. The storm had finally passed. The world outside the pod lay silent under a heavy blanket of snow. The horizon glowed faintly blue beneath the morning sky, endless and empty. For the first time in days, Ryan could see the faint shape of the mountains far away, a sign that the world wasn't completely dead. Inside the pod, the air was still cold, but bearable. The heater had died long ago, but the worst of the frost had faded. Ryan sat near the sealed hatch, cleaning his pistol and checking his supplies. He had enough food for maybe 3 more days. After that, it would be snow and desperation. He looked toward Elira. She was sitting quietly near the wall, her legs folded, her eyes distant. The faint blue light under her skin pulsed like a heartbeat. She looked stronger than before, but there was something heavy in her expression. Ryan broke the silence. "You didn't sleep." Elira's eyes flicked to him, then back to the floor. "Sleep is full of voices. I try not to listen." "Voices?" he asked. "What kind of voices?" Her hands tightened around the blanket. "My people. They are gone, but the snow keeps their memories. Sometimes I hear them call my name." Ryan's stomach sank. "You mean you're the only one left?" She nodded slowly. The war took everything." Ryan leaned forward. "War? Against who?" She hesitated, looking up at him. "Humans." The word hit him like a punch. "That's not possible," he said quickly. "Humans haven't been this far out. This sector isn't even mapped." Elira's voice was quiet but sharp. "Maybe not your humans, but there were others before you. They came in silver ships. They burned our sky. They said they were searching for energy. They called it the Caldwell Project." Ryan froze. That name, it sounded familiar. He'd heard it whispered back on Earth. Secret missions. Colonies that never made it back. Stories that the government had buried. "Caldwell," he murmured. "That's impossible. Those missions were over 50 years ago." Elira tilted her head. 50 years for you. For my world, only 10 winters. Time moves differently here." Ryan rubbed his forehead. "So your planet, this place, it was home once." Her expression darkened. "It was paradise. Now it's a graveyard." She stood slowly and walked toward the window, pressing her hand against the glass. Her fingers glowed faintly where they touched the frost. "We had forests of silver trees, rivers that sang when the wind moved. My people were not soldiers. We were healers, builders, dreamers. But when the sky burned, we learned to fight too late." Ryan felt a deep ache in his chest. He had seen war before, on Mars, on Europa, but hearing her voice shake with pain hit differently. He asked quietly, "How did you survive?" Elira turned her gaze to him. "I was a medic. When the last battle ended, I hid among the ruins. The Frenoks came soon after. They were not always monsters. The fire changed them. Now they hunt what little life remains." Ryan's mind raced. Everything started to make sense, the creatures, the ruins, the frozen world. Human greed had turned this planet into hell. He looked down, guilt twisting in his gut. "I'm sorry." Elira studied him carefully. "You are not them, but you carry their shadow." Her words stung, but she wasn't wrong. Humanity's history was full of ghosts. Worlds broken, lives lost for progress. He tried to change the subject. "If this planet was part of the Caldwell Project, then maybe Maybe there's still a human base somewhere. Maybe we can find shelter or a signal. Elira's eyes flickered. There is a place, she said slowly. A metal tower beyond the frozen lake. It was where your kind made the sky burn. I never went near it again, Ryan stood. Then that's where we're going. She frowned. You don't understand. The Franox nest there now. It is death to walk that path, he smiled faintly, a tired but determined grin. Yeah, well, I've been close to death for days. Guess we're already halfway there. For a moment, Elira just stared at him. Then slowly a spark of something like admiration appeared in her eyes. Humans, she whispered, always walking toward danger. Ryan reached for his gear and checked his oxygen tank. We'll leave when the light grows stronger, he said. If there's even a chance of a signal, we have to try. Elira nodded quietly, though her expression stayed heavy. As Ryan prepared the equipment, she looked down at her glowing hands. Her voice trembled softly. If we go there, I will see what I lost again. Every memory frozen in the snow. He turned toward her. Then we face it together. Outside, the wind began to rise again, soft and cold, whispering through the cracks like a warning. The horizon shimmered faintly, and far in the distance, the faint shape of a metal tower pierced the pale sky. Elira looked at it and whispered, "That is where the truth sleeps." Ryan adjusted his pack, his eyes fixed on the same tower. Then it's time we wake it up. The pale sun hung low behind thick clouds as Ryan and Elira began their journey across the frozen wasteland. The storm had passed, but the silence was worse. Every crunch of snow under their boots sounded too loud, like the world itself was listening. The air was thin, biting at their lungs. Frost clung to Ryan's eyelashes as he walked beside her. Elira moved lightly despite her small frame, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon with quiet caution. She had wrapped herself in the thermal blanket, now tied like a cloak fluttering behind her. For hours they walked without speaking. The ground beneath them was smooth at first, then broken by the bones of old machines, rusted human tech half buried in ice. Burnt metal, shattered helmets, cracked glass domes, echoes of a war both of them now carried. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. So this tower, what did humans build it for? Elira didn't look at him. They said it was for study, to take the energy that fed our world and use it for their engines. But they took too much. The planet's heart froze, he sighed. We never learn, do we? Before she could answer, Elira stopped. Her head tilted slightly, ears twitching. Something moves, she whispered. Ryan froze too. The wind was gone now, and in the distance came a faint rhythmic sound like claws tapping ice. Franox? He asked. Elira nodded slowly. They follow the scent. They always follow. Ryan raised his plasma pistol, scanning the fog ahead. We need cover now. They sprinted toward a cluster of metal wrecks nearby, old vehicles from the war long ago. As they ducked behind a fallen shuttle wing, the first shadow appeared. Then another. Through the thin fog, Ryan saw their outlines, long crawling beasts with 6 legs and curved spines like knives. Their eyes glowed faint yellow, hundreds of them flickering in the cold mist. Run, he whispered. Elira shook her head. No running. They chase movement. She pressed her palm to the frozen ground, closing her eyes. Her skin glowed brighter, the faint hum of her power returning. The air around her shimmered like heat. Ryan's instincts screamed to move, but he held still, trusting her. The first Franox let out a deep growl, lowering its body. It sniffed the air, its breath forming dark mist. Then it leaped. Straight toward them, Ryan fired. The plasma bolt cut through the fog, striking the creature's chest. It screamed, the sound echoing across the snow. Now they know we're here, Elira shouted. Dozens of eyes lit up all at once. The swarm was coming. Move! Ryan yelled, pulling her hand. They broke into a run across the frozen plain. Behind them, claws tore through the snow, each step pounding like thunder. Elira's voice shook. The tower, just ahead. If we reach the base, I can use the old power grid to shield us. Ryan looked ahead through the blur of snow. The tower rose like a black needle from the ice, its surface cracked but still standing tall against the storm. It wasn't far, but the Franox were faster. One of them lunged, its claws slicing the air. Ryan turned and fired again. The bolt missed, but Elira threw her hand forward, releasing a pulse of blue energy. The creature crashed midair, its body smoking where the energy hit. She fell to her knees, panting. I can't hold much longer. Ryan grabbed her arm, helping her up. Then save it for the tower. They ran again, hearts pounding. The sound of the Phreноx filled the air now, a chorus of growls and hisses. Ryan's pistol beeped low battery. Only 2 shots left. As they neared the tower's gate, one of the beasts slammed into Ryan from behind, knocking him into the snow. The pistol flew from his hand. "Ryan!" Elira screamed. He rolled just as the Phreноx's claws missed his face by inches. The stench of the creature's breath hit him, burnt flesh and decay. It roared, raising its arm for a killing strike, then Elira stepped between them. Her eyes blazed with light. She pressed both hands against the creature's chest and a surge of white-blue energy exploded outward. The blast threw the Phreноx back, shattering its body into ash. The shockwave echoed through the valley. The other creatures stopped for a moment, uncertain, their eyes flickering. Elira collapsed, the light fading from her skin. Ryan caught her just in time. "Come on," he said, his voice shaking. "We're almost there." He carried her toward the tower's heavy doors, each step slower than the last. The Phreноx roared again, recovering from their shock. With his free hand, Ryan slammed his fist against the tower's control panel. The ancient system sparked, then flickered to life. The doors began to slide open, painfully slow. Come on. The creatures were almost on them. Ryan turned, raised his last plasma charge, and fired into the snow. The bolt lit the night like lightning. The beasts recoiled, blinded. The doors finally opened wide enough. Ryan stumbled inside with Elira in his arms. He hit the close switch, and the doors sealed shut behind them with a thundering echo. Silence. Ryan dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Elira's head rested against his chest, her eyes half open. "We made it," he whispered. "You're safe," but Elira didn't smile. Her voice was weak. "No one is safe here, human. The tower. It remembers." Ryan looked up. The dark interior of the tower was massive, filled with humming machines, flickering blue lights, and rows of old human markings on the walls. For the first time, Ryan felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. Something in this place was alive, and it had been waiting for them. The heavy doors of the ancient tower closed with a deep metallic thud that echoed through the silence. For a long moment, Ryan just knelt there, catching his breath. The air inside was dry and thin, tasting of dust and rust. It smelled like old electricity, like something that had been asleep for a century and had just woken up. Elira lay in his arms, her skin pale and her glow faint. Her breathing was slow but steady. Ryan brushed a strand of silver hair from her face and whispered, "We're safe now." But the tower didn't feel safe. It felt awake. As his eyes adjusted, he saw faint lights flickering along the walls, blue symbols pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. The floor was made of black metal, cracked and frozen in places, yet still humming with energy. In the center of the chamber stood a tall column covered in human letters mixed with alien ones. It looked like a communication hub, but far more advanced than anything Ryan had seen. Elira stirred weakly. "The heart of the tower," she whispered. "It remembers everything." Ryan looked down at her. "What do you mean?" "This is where your kind opened the sky," she said, her voice trembling. "Where they pulled the light from my world's core. It was their greatest success. And our end." Ryan clenched his jaw. "Then maybe it's time we shut it down for good." He helped her to her feet. She leaned against him, her body trembling from exhaustion, yet her eyes shone brighter now. Together they walked toward the column. The symbols glowed stronger with every step they took, reacting to their presence. Suddenly, a deep mechanical voice filled the chamber. "Human signature detected. Accessing Caldwell protocol." Ryan froze. The voice was old, broken, distorted, but unmistakably human-made. "Who are you?" he demanded. The voice continued. "Caldwell Station 14. Automated Defense and Research Core. Status corrupted. Warning. Planetary collapse at 98%. Elira flinched, her hand gripping Ryan's sleeve. "It still runs the machines," she whispered. "It still feeds on what is left." Ryan stared at the massive column. "Then we stop it." He approached the control panel, its surface covered in frost. A cracked display flickered to life, showing a familiar Earth insignia, an old United Systems logo. Below it, red lines of data scrolled endlessly, describing power transfers, containment failures, and life-form harvesting. His chest tightened. Human greed had done this. It wasn't a natural disaster. It was a crime. "Elira," he said softly, "your people didn't lose to the cold. They were taken by us. She nodded slowly, her eyes wet with light. And yet, you are here, trying to fix what they broke. That is why I believed you. Before Ryan could speak, the tower shook violently. The floor rumbled beneath them. Outside, a distant roar echoed, the Phreноx. The creatures had returned, pounding against the sealed doors. System breach detected, the voice boomed again, activating internal defense. Panels opened in the walls, revealing small drones, rusted, sparking, but still functional. They hovered into the air, aiming red sensors at Ryan. Of course, he muttered, because nothing's ever easy. He raised his pistol, but Elira stepped forward. No, human, let me. Her hands began to glow again, brighter this time, stronger than ever before. This place was built from my people's energy. I can end it, Ryan shook his head. No, you'll burn out. You're barely standing, she smiled faintly. You gave me warmth when I was dying. Let me give it back. Before he could stop her, she placed both hands on the core. The lights on the walls flared to life, the symbols swirling faster. Blue energy surged through her arms, her body trembling as the entire tower began to hum. Outside, the Phreenox howled louder, their claws scraping against the metal. The ground shook as the planet itself seemed to respond to her song. Ryan shouted over the noise. Elira, you have to stop. She turned her head slightly, her eyes shining like stars. It's all right, Ryan. The world was cold for too long. With one final breath, she released everything. A wave of white-blue light burst from the core, racing across the floor, through the walls, and out into the frozen plains. The tower blazed like a beacon. The Phreenox outside screamed and fled into the snow, their bodies melting into vapor. Then, silence. Ryan blinked against the light. When it faded, Elira was on the floor, her body still and her glow gone. The tower's lights dimmed one by one, leaving only the faint warmth of the dawn seeping through the cracks above. He knelt beside her, his throat tight. Elira, please. For a moment there was nothing. Then her eyes opened faintly, soft, peaceful. Warm, she whispered. It's warm again. Ryan took her hand, holding it tightly. You did it. You saved us. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. You kept your promise. Then she went still. Outside, the first light of morning spread across the ice. The once frozen plains shimmered, tiny drops of water forming where the sunlight touched. The planet was breathing again. Ryan carried her outside, laying her gently on the snow beneath the soft dawn. Above them, the clouds parted, revealing a golden sun that hadn't been seen in years. He whispered, You were right, Elira. Humans break things, but sometimes we fix them too. His radio crackled suddenly, static, then a faint voice. Rescue team to shuttle survivor. Signal confirmed. We're coming for you. Ryan looked toward the sky, the sunlight warming his face. The cold world was waking up, and in the snow beside him, where Elira had lain, a single blue flower began to bloom.